14th, 1998.
The members of the Tectonic Theater Project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming,
and conducted interviews with people of the town.
During the next year, we would return to Laramie several times
and conduct over 200 interviews.
The play you are about to see is edited from those interviews, as well as from journal entries by members of the company and other found texts.
Company member Greg Perotti.
My first interview was with Detective Sergeant Hing of the Laramie Police Department. At the start of the interview, he was sitting behind his desk, sitting something like this. I was born and raised here. My family is a third generation. My grandparents moved here in the early 1900s. We've had basically three, my daughter makes it fourth generation. Quite a while, it's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. Now, the towns in southern Wyoming are spaced out because of the railroad came through. It was how far they could go before having to refuel and rewater. And Laramie was a major stopping point. That's why the towns are spaced so far apart. We're one of the largest states in the country and the least populated.
There's so much space between people and towns here, so much time for reflection.
Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming.
You have an opportunity to be happy in your life here. I found that people here were nicer than in the Midwest, where I used to teach, because they were happy. They were glad the sun was shining, and it shines a lot here.
What you've got your old-time, traditional-type ranchers. They've been here forever. Laramie is a major hub for where they come to get their supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is something all of our ancestors taught us.
Eileen Engen, rancher.
If you don't take care of the land, then you ruin it and you lose your living. So you first have to do everything you can to improve the land.
I love it here.
Doc O'Connor, limousine driver.
You couldn't put me back in that mess out there back east. The best part about it is the climate, the cold, the wind. They say the Wyoming wind will drive a man insane, but you know what? It don't bother me. Well, some of the times it bothers me, but most of the time it don't.
And then you got the university population.
I moved here after living in a couple of big cities.
Philip Dubois, president of the University of Wyoming.
I loved it there, but you'd have to be out of your mind to let your kids out after dark. And here in the summertime, my kids are out until 11 o'clock at night, and I don't think twice about it.
And then you've got the people who live in Laramie, basically.
I moved here from rural Texas.
Zachy Salmon, Laramie resident.
Now, in Laramie, if you don't know a person, you definitely know someone they know. So it could only be 1 degree removed at most. And for me, I love it. I mean, I love to go to the grocery store because I get to visit 4 or 5 or 6 people every time I go. And I don't really mind people knowing my business because what's my business? My business is basically good.
I like the trains too. They don't bother me. Well, some of the times they bother me, but most of the times they don't. Although one goes by every 13 minutes out where I live.
Doc actually lives up in Bossler, but everybody in Laramie knows him. He's also not really a doctor.
They used to carry cattle, them trains. Now all they carry is diapers and cars.
I grew up in Cody, Wyoming.
April Silva, university student.
Laramie is better than where I grew up. I'll give it that. It's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. Now, when the incident happened with that boy, a lot of the press came out here. Some of them even followed me up to the crime scene. And it was a beautiful day, absolutely gorgeous. The sun was shining and the air was real clear and crisp. And the sky was that blue that, you'll never be able to paint. It's just sky blue, it's just gorgeous. And the mountains in the back with a little snow on them. And this one reporter, person who was out there, she said,
Well, who found the boy? Who was out here anyway?
and I said, well, Laramie is mountain biking in Laramie is really popular, and jogging is really big, and mountain bike riding, it's close to town. And she looked at me and she said,
Who the hell would want to run around down here?
and I'm thinking, lady, you're missing the point. All you gotta do is look around, smell the air, listen to the birds, see the mountains, just take in what's around you. And I felt that they were nothing but the story. I didn't feel judged. I felt that they were stupid. You're missing the point. You're just missing the whole point.
It's hard to talk about Laramie now.
Jedediah Schultz.
If you would have asked me before, I would have told you that Laramie is a beautiful town, secluded enough that you can have your own identity. A town with a strong sense of community. Everyone knows everyone. A town with a personality that most larger cities are stripped of. Now, after Matthew, I would say that Laramie is defined by an accident, a crime. We've become Waco, we've become Jasper. We're a noun, a definition, a sign. We may be able to get rid of that, but it'll sure take a while.
Journal entries, members of the company, Andy Paris.
Moises called saying he had an idea for his next theater project. But there was a somberness to his voice, so I asked him what it was all about, and he said he wanted to do a piece about what's happening in Wyoming.
Stephen Belberg.
Lee told me the company was going to Laramie to conduct interviews, and they wanted me to come. But I'm hesitant. I have no real interest in prying into a town's unraveling.
Amanda Gronick.
I've never done anything like this in my life. How do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask?
Moises Kaufman.
The company has agreed that we should go to Laramie for a week and interview people. I'm a bit afraid about taking 10 people on a trip of this nature. Must make some safety rules. No one works alone. Everyone carries a cell phone. Have made preliminary contacts with Rebecca Hilker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming. She is hosting a party for us our first night in Laramie and has promised to introduce us to possible interviewees.
I must tell you that when I first heard you were thinking of coming here, when you first called me, I wanted to say, you just kicked me in the stomach. Why are you doing this to me? But then I thought, that's stupid. You're not doing this to me. And more importantly, I thought about it and decided we've had so much negative closure on this whole thing, and the students really need to talk. When this happened, they started talking about it, and then the media descended and all dialogue stopped. You know, I really love my students because they're free thinkers, and you may not like what they have to say, and you may not like their opinions because they could be very redneck, but they're honest and they're truthful. So there's an excitement here. There's a dynamic here with my students that I never had when I was in the Midwest or North Dakota, because there was so much Puritanism that dictated how people looked at the world that a lot of times they didn't have an opinion. You couldn't get them to express an opinion, and quite honestly, I'd rather have opinions that I don't like and have that dynamic in education. There's a student I think you should talk to. His name is Jedediah Schultz.
I've lived in Wyoming my whole life. The family's been in Wyoming, well, for generations. Now, when it came time to go to college, my parents couldn't afford to send me to college. I wanted to study theater, and I knew that if I was going to go to college, I was going to have to get on a scholarship. And so they have this competition each year, this Wyoming State High School competition, and I knew that if I didn't take first place in duets, that I wasn't going to get a scholarship. So I went to the theater department of the university asking for good scenes, and I asked one of the professors, I was like, I need a killer scene. And he was like, here you go, this is it. And it was from Angels in America. So I read it, and I knew that if I could take first place if I did a good enough job. And when that time came, I told my parents to come to the competition. Now you have to understand, my parents go to everything. Every ball game, every hockey game, everything I've ever done. And so they sat me down in their room and they told me if I did that scene that they wouldn't come to the competition. Because they believe that that is wrong. That homosexuality is wrong. They believe that strongly about it, that they wouldn't come see their own son do probably the most important thing he'd done to that point in his life. And I didn't know what to do. I've never gone against my parents' wishes, and I was kind of worried about it, but I decided to do it. And all I can remember about the competition is that when we were done, me and my scene partner, we came up to each other, shook hands, and there was a standing ovation. Oh man, it was amazing. And we took first place, and we won. And that's how come I could afford to be here at the university, because of that scene. And it was one of the best moments of my life, and my parents weren't there. And to that point, that was the one thing that my parents didn't see me do. And thinking back on it, I think, why did I do it? Why did I oppose my parents? Because I'm not gay, so why did I do it? I guess the only honest answer I could give is, well, I wanted to win. It was such a good scene. It was like the best scene. Do you know Mr. Kushner? Maybe you can tell him.
Company member, Greg Parati.
We arrived today in the Denver airport and drove to Laramie. The moment we crossed the Wyoming border, I swear I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it was strange that the Wyoming sign said,
Wyoming, like no place on earth.
Instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member, Lee Fondakowski.
I stopped at a local inn for a bite to eat, and my waitress said to me,
Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954, and Debbie Ruggins was big back then, but I promise I won't slap you if you put your elbows on the table.
Today, the company tried to explain to me to no avail what chicken fried steak was.
Now, are you from Wyoming, or just passing through?
We're just passing through.
Company member, Barbara Pitts.
We arrived in Laramie tonight, just passing the
Welcome to Laramie
sign, population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was a Walmart. In the dark, we could be in any main drag in America, fast food chains, gas stations. But as we drove into the downtown area by the railroad tracks, the building still looked like a turn-of-the-century Western town. Oh, and as we pass the University Inn, on a sign where amenities such as heated pool or cable TV are usually touted, it said, "Hate is not a Laramie value."
Greg Karate.
I met today with two longtime Laramie residents, Allison Mears and Marge Murray, two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Well, Laramie used to be like when Marge was growing up. It was mostly rural.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it. All my kids had horses.
Well, there was a lot more land. I mean, you could keep your pet cow, your horse, your little chickens, just have your little bit of acreage.
Yeah, I'd run around the house in my all-togethers and do housework while the kids were in school. And nobody could see me. If they got that close...
Well, then that's their problem.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I got the expression right in your all-togethers.
Well, yeah, honey. Why wear clothes?
Now, how's he going to use that in his play?
So this is a big ranching town?
Oh, no. Not just ranching. This was a big railroad town at one time before they moved everything to Cheyenne, Green River, and Omaha. Well, now it's just a drive-through stop for the railroad. But even, in the 50s? Well, they had one big roundhouse, and they had such a shop you could build a complete engine.
Yeah, my mom worked there.
Your mom works in a roundhouse?
Yep, she washed engines. Her name was Minnie. We used to sing that song for her. You know that song.
What song?
Run, go the roundhouse, Minnie. They can't corner you there.
But I'll tell you, Wyoming's bad in terms of jobs. I mean, the university has all the big high-whoop-de-doo jobs, but here in Wyoming, unless you're a professional, bulk of the people are working minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, I've either been in the service industry or bartending most of my life. Now, I know everybody in town.
And she does.
And I do. Now, I'll tell you, here in Laramie, there is a difference, and there always has been. What it is a class distinction between the educated and the not educated. And the educated don't understand why the ones that are not educated don't get educated. Like I said, my kids had to fight for their mother because she was a bartender. Never mind, it was the best damn bartender in town.
And she was.
So, let me just ask you, what was your response when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Well, I've been close enough to the case to know many of the people. My daughter's on the sheriff's department. As for the gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or the other as long as they don't bother me. And that's the opinion of most of the Laramie population. Now, they might poke one. If they were in a bar situation they had been drinking, they might even smack one in the mouth. But then they'd just walk away. Most of them said they would just say, "I don't swing that way," and whistle on about their business. Laramie is live and let live.
I'd say Marge knows a lot more, except she's even willing to say, and we have to respect her for that.
Well, where are you going with this story?
Well, we haven't quite decided yet, but when we finished, we're going to try to bring it back around to Laramie.
Okay, then there are parts I won't tell you.
Company member Andy Paris.
Today, for the first time, we met someone who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Trish Steger, owner of a shop in town, referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come into my shop, and that's how I knew him.
It was the first time we had heard him referred to as Matt instead of Matthew. Did he go by Matt to everyone?
On the 2nd of October, I got a call about 10 after 7.
Doc O'Connor.
It was Matthew Shepard, and he said, "Can you pick me up on the corner of 3rd and Grand?" So I pull up to the corner to see who Matthew Shepard, and it's a little guy, about 5'2", soaking wet, I bet you 97 pounds tops. They say he was 110, but I wouldn't have believed it. They also said he was 5'5" in the newspapers, but this man, he was really only 5'2", maybe 5'1". So he walks up the window, and I'm gonna try and go in steps here so you could better understand the principle of this man. So he walks up the window, and I say, "Are you Matthew Shepard?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm Matthew Shepard, but I don't want you to call me Matthew or Mr. Shepard. I don't want you to call me anything. My name is Matt, and I want you to know that I'm gay, and we're going to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that?" And I said, "Well, how are you paying?" You see, the fact is that Laramie doesn't have any gay bars. For that matter, neither does Wyoming. So he was hiring me to drive out to Fort Collins, Colorado, which is about an hour away. Matt was a blunt little jerk, you know what I'm saying? But I liked him because he was straightforward. You see what I'm saying? Maybe gay, but straightforward. You see what I'm saying?
I don't know, how does any one person never tell about the other? You really should talk to my sister, Romaine. She was a really close friend of Matthew's.
We never called him Matthew, actually. Most of the time we called him Choo-Choo, because we used to call him Matthew, and then we just called him Choo-Choo. And whenever I think of Matthew, I always think of his incredible beaming smile. I mean, he'd walk in and he'd be like, and he'd smile at everyone. He just made you feel great. And he would stare people down in the coffee shop because he always wanted to sit on the end seat so that he could talk to me while I was working. And if someone was sitting in that seat, he would just sit down and stare at them until they left, and then he would claim his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. I mean, he really wanted to get into political affairs. That's all his big interest was watching CNN and MSNBC. I mean, he was just really smart in political affairs, but not too smart on, like, common sense things. So he goes to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came in,
John Peacock, Matthew Shepard's academic advisor.
to the point of being somewhat mousy, I'd say. And he was having difficulties adjusting, but this is his home now, and he made it clear. And soon the mousiness and shyness made way for a person excited on the track they're going to embark on. He was just figuring out wanting to work on human rights, how he was going to do that. And when that person figures it out, they start to bloom a little bit, and they start to say, wow, there are opportunities out there. I can be important. There are things I can do.
I did speak to Matthew about 48 hours before his attack, and he told me he had joined the gay and lesbian group on campus, and he was enjoying it, you know. He was getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot. I mean, he was totally stoked about school. Yeah, he was really happy about being there.
And in retrospect, and I can only say this in retrospect, of course, I believe that's where he was heading, human rights, which only adds to the irony and tragedy of this.
Let me tell you something else here. There's more gay people in Laramie than meets the eye. I know for a fact. They're not particularly, the queens. The gay people, the queens, run around faggot-type people. No, they're the ones that throw bales of hay, jump on horses, brand them, and kick butt. You see what I'm saying? As I always say, don't F with the Wyoming queer, because they'll kick you and your mother effing rear. But that's not the point of what I'm trying to say, because I know a lot of gay people in Laramie. I know a lot of people, period. I've lived up here some 40-odd years. You see what I'm saying? And I don't think people in Laramie give a damn one way or another if you're gay or straight. That's just what I just said. It doesn't matter. If there's 8 men and 1 woman in a Wyoming bar, which is often the case, now you stop and ask yourself, now, who's getting what? You see what I'm saying? Now, geez, it doesn't take a big, intelligent mind to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first got here
Captain Connolly.
was that I was the first out or gay lesbian faculty member on campus. And that was in 1992, so it wasn't that long ago. I was asked in my interview what my husband does for a living, and so I came out then. Do you want a funny story? When you first get here as a new faculty member, there are all these things you have to do. So I went in my office one day and I saw that I had a call from this woman. And I figured, it was a health insurance call, something like that. So I call her back and I could hear her clicking away on her keyboard. And I said, this is Kathy Connolly returning your phone call. And she said, oh, it's you. And I thought, well, this is bizarre. And she said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are. And I was like, uh-huh. And she said, I heard you came as a couple. I'm one too, not a couple, just a person. And so she was the type of lesbian who knew I was coming, and she wanted to come out and meet me immediately. But she later told me that there are other lesbians that wouldn't be seen with me, that I would irreparably taint them, that just to be seen with me could be a problem.
When I first came here, I knew it was going to be hard as a gay man.
Jonas Sloanecker.
But I kept telling myself people should live where they want to live. So there'd be times I'd go down to Denver, and I'd go to gay bars, and people would ask me where I'm from, and I'd say, Laramie, Wyoming. I met so many men down there from Wyoming, so many gay men that grew up here, and they're like, how could you live there? I had to get out. Grr, grr, grr. But every once in a while, I'd meet a man who would say, oh gosh, I miss Laramie. I mean, that's where I really want to live. And then they get this starry-eyed look in their eye, and I'm like, if that's where you want to live, then do it. I mean, imagine if more gay people stayed in smaller towns. Easier said than done, of course.
Today, we're moving from our motel and heading to the best Western. Why says Kaufman? My hope is that it's a better Western.
Amanda Grant, today we divided up to go to different churches within the community. Moises and I were given a Baptist church. We were welcomed to the services by the Reverend himself, standing at the entrance of the chapel. This is what I remember of his sermon that morning.
My dear brothers and sisters, I am here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now, I know a simple truth that I tell to my colleagues, and I'm going to tell it to you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Scientists tell me that human history, that the world is 5 billion or 6 billion years old. After all, what's a billion years, give or take?
The Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
The sociology of religion in the West.
Stephen Meade Johnson, Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious Christians in this town, Baptist, Mormon, they're everywhere. It's not just so Filipino, they're all over.
There's a little something different going on in the Mormon church that irritates some folks.
Doug Law, stake ecclesiastical leader for the Mormon Church.
And that is that we believe that God speaks to man today. One thing that's with the folks who read the Bible, God speaks to us today. And that's what we believe in. We believe that the prophet of the church has the authority to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
And so the spectrum would be to the left side of that panel, so far left that I'm probably by myself, is me and the Unitarian Church. Unitarians are by and large humanists, many of whom are atheists. We're not even really sure we're a religion. And to my right on the spectrum, to his credit, Father Roger, Catholic priest, who is well established here, and God bless him, he did not equivocate at all when this happened. He hosted the vigil for Matthew that night.
I was really jolted because when we did the vigils for Matthew, we wanted to get other ministers involved. So we called them, and they weren't going to get involved. It was like, we're going to sit back and see which way the wind is blowing, and that angered me immensely. We're supposed to stand as leaders, and it made me think, wow, what's going on here?
God has set boundaries, and one of our responsibilities is to learn. So what is it that God wants? So we study scriptures and listen to our leaders. Then we start to get a feel what the bounds are. Now, once you know what the bounds are, you start to get a feel for what are out of bounds. There's a proclamation in the Mormon Church. A family is defined as one man, one woman, and children. That's a family. That's about as clear as I can state it. There's no sexual deviation in the Mormon Church. No leniency. We just believe it's out of bounds.
I must warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But let the Bible be your guide. It's in there. It's all in there.
The Christian pastors, many of the more conservative ones, were silent on this. Conservative Christians use the Bible to show the rest of the world it says here in the Bible. And most Americans believe, and they do, that the Bible is the Word of God. And how are you going to fight that?
I am a biblicist, which means that the Bible doesn't need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived in Laramie on September 15th. I looked around, tumbleweed, cement factory, and thought, what in the hell am I doing in Wyoming? 3 weeks later, I found out what the hell I was doing in Wyoming.
I had breakfast this morning with a university student named Zubaida Ullah. She's an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. Yeah, my parents are from Bangladesh. 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a scarf. That has really changed my life in Laramie. Yeah, people say things to me like, why do you have to wear that thing on your head? And when I'm standing in the grocery store, I'm not looking to give people Islam 101, you know what I mean? So I'll be like, well, it's part of my religion. And they'll be like, this is the worst, because they'll be like, yeah, I know it's part of your religion, but why? And how am I supposed to get to the whole doctrine of physical modesty and my own spiritual relationship with the Lord standing there with my poppin' chips, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so unreal to me that a group from New York would be writing a play about Laramie. And I'm picturing it, and you're gonna be in a show about my town. You're gonna be on stage in New York acting like you're us. That is so weird.
Bring.
Hello?
Yes, hello. My name is Amanda Bronick, and I'm here in Laramie working with the theater company. And I was wondering if I could speak to the Reverend, your husband, about his thoughts on recent events.
Well, I don't think he'll want to talk to you. He has very biblical views about homosexuality. He doesn't condone that kind of violence, but he doesn't condone that kind of lifestyle either. You know what I mean? And he was just bombarded with press after this happened. The media has just been terrible about this whole thing.
Oh, I understand. It really must have just been terrible.
Oh, yes. I think we're all hoping this just goes away.
Well, do you think maybe I can call back and speak to your husband, but just briefly?
Well, all right. You can call back tonight at 9 o'clock.
Thanks, I'll do that.
Today, Barbara and I went to the fireside, the last place Matthew was seen alive.
The fireside. Definitely feels like a college bar, with a couple of pool tables and a stage area for karaoke. Still, the regulars in the late afternoon were hardly the college crowd.
The first person we talked with was Matt Mickelson, the owner.
My great-grandfather moved to Laramie in 1862. He owned Laramie's first opera house. It was called Old Blue Front. In 1870, Louisa Graham Swain cast the first woman's ballot in any free election in the world. And that's why Wyoming's the equality state. So what I want to do is reestablish my bar business as Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium. I want to have a pool hall. I want a gift shop. I want to have a restaurant and do all this stuff, you know? Every night's ladies' night. And so the fireside is the first step towards the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium.
So what about the night Matthew Shepard was here?
We had karaoke that night, 20 or 30 people here. Matthew Shepard came in, sitting right where you're sitting, just hanging out. I mean, if you want to talk to somebody, you should talk to Matt Galloway. He was the kid that was bartending that night. You'd have to meet him. His character stands for itself. Hey, is Galloway bartending tonight?
Okay, I'm gonna make this brief, quick. We don't need everything factual, just the facts. Here we go. 10 o'clock, eye pocket, usual time, Tuesday nights, 10:30. Matthew Shepard shows up, alone, sits down, orders a Heineken.
Phil agree, friend with Matthew Shepard.
Matt always used to drink Heineken, and nothing else, even though you had to pay $9.50 for a six-pack. He'd always buy the same beer.
So, what can I tell you about Matt? If you've had 100 customers like him, it'd be the most perfect bar I've ever been to, okay? And nothing to do with sexual orientation, absolute mannerisms. Manners, politeness, intelligence, taking care of me. As a tips, everything, conversation, dress nice, clean cut. Some people you just know, sits down, please, thank you, offers intellect within their vocabulary. So he just kicks it there. Doesn't seem like he's looking for anyone or worried about anything. Just enjoy his drink and the company around him. Now, approximately 11:45, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson show up, and I didn't know their names then, but they're the accused. They're the perps. They're the accused, and they walk in just very stone-faced, you know, dirty, grungy, rude, gimme that sort of type. And they walk up to the bar and, as you know, paid for a pitcher with dimes and quarters, which is something that you don't forget. You don't forget that. $5.50 in dimes and quarters, that's a freaking nightmare. So Henderson and McKinney, they didn't seem intoxicated at all. They just ordered their beer, took their pitcher with them back into the pool room, and kept to themselves. Next thing I know, about a half hour later, they're walking around, no beer. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm not gonna ask them if they want another one, because obviously they just paid for a pitcher in dimes and quarters. I have a real good feeling they don't have any more money.
Romaine Patterson.
Money meant nothing to Matthew because he came from a lot of it, and he would hand over his wallet in 2 seconds because money meant nothing. His shoes might have meant something. They could say it was a robbery. I don't buy it for even an iota of a second.
Then a few moments later, I look over and Aaron and Russell began talking to Matthew Shepard.
Aaron said that a guy walked up to him and said that he was gay and wanted to get with Aaron and Russ.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Aaron McKinney.
And that he got aggravated with it and told him that he was straight and didn't want anything to do with it and just walked off. That was when he said that he and Russ went into the bathroom and decided to pretend that they were gay and get him in the truck and rob him.
Okay, no. They say that Matt approached them, that he came on to them. I absolutely, positively disbelieve and refute that statement 100%. Refute it, and I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. 1, character reference. Why would he come on to them? Why then? He wasn't coming on to anybody else in the bar. They say he's gay, he's a flaming gay. He's going to come on to people like that? BS. He never came on to me. Hello? He's going to come on to them too? I don't believe it. 2, territorialism is the word I would use for this, and that's the fact that Matt was sitting there. Aaron and Russell were in the pool room. Upon their first interaction, they were in Matt's area, in the area that Matt had been seeing all night. Now, who approached who by that?
But Matthew was the kind of person, he would never not talk to someone for any reason. If someone started talking to him, he'd just be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He never had any problem just striking up a conversation with anybody.
Matt did feel lonely a lot of times, though, and me knowing that and knowing how gullible he could be, he would have walked right into it. The fact he was at the bar alone without any friends made him that much more vulnerable.
So the only thing is, and this is what I'm testifying to, because I'm basically the key witness in this case. Basically what I'm testifying to is that I saw Matt leave. I saw 2 individuals leave with Matthew. I didn't see their faces, but I saw the back of their heads. At the same time, Henderson and McKinney were no longer around. You do the math.
Actually, I think the DJ was the last one to talk to Matthew that night. Gave him a cigarette or something. His name's Shadow.
I was the last person that talked to Matt before he left the fireside. I was just BSing around with my stuff when he stopped me. Actually, I stopped him.
him, and he's like, hey, Shadow, da-da-da. And I was like, what, man, you getting ready to leave? And he's like, yeah, man, and this and that. And then I noticed them two guys. They stood outside. You could see it. You could see it. They were standing over there, and Matt was looking over to them, and they were looking back at him. And I stood and talked to Matt for like a good 10 minutes. And you seen the guys he was with. You seen him, you know, like getting like worried and anxious to leave and stuff. So when they took off, I seen it when they took off. It was in a black truck, a small truck. The three of them sat in the front, and Matt sat in the middle. And I didn't think nothing of it, you know? I didn't figure them guys was gonna be like that.
A friend of Aaron McKinney.
Yeah, I've known Aaron a long time. I liked Aaron a lot. Aaron was a good kid. That's why I was shocked when all this happened, you know? I knew he was living out far, and his trailer is what he told me, with his girl. They just started dating last summer. They must have gotten pregnant right away, though, you know, because they had a kid. He was 21 years old and running around with a kid. But you see, that's just the kind of guy Aaron was, you know? Like, he'd always dress in these big clothes, Tommy Hilfiger, Polo, Gucci. At the time I knew Aaron, he was just trying to fit in, you know, acting tough, acting cool. But you could get in his face about something and he'd back down like he was some kind of scared kid.
Sherry Annenson.
Russell was just so sweet. He was the one that was the Eagle Scout. I mean, his whole presence was just quiet and sweet. So of course it doesn't make sense to me. And I mean, I know it wasn't a real intimate relationship either. I was just his landlord, but I remember working with him at the Chuck Wagon too. And like at the Christmas party, he was just totally drunk out of his mind. We were all just pretty much party time. And he wasn't belligerent. He didn't change. His personality didn't change. He was still the same little old meek Russell. And I remember him coming up to me saying, when you get a chance, Sherry, can I have a dance? Which we never really got around to doing that. But now I just want to shake him, you know? What were you thinking? What in the hell were you thinking?
The fence. I've been out there 4 times. I've taken visitors. That place has become a pilgrimage site. Clearly, that's a very powerful personal experience to go out there. It's so stark and so empty that you can't help but think of Matthew out there for 18 hours in nearly freezing temperatures, with that view isolated, and the God, my God, why have you forsaken me comes to mind.
Company member Greg Periotti. Phil Labrie, a friend of Matthew's, took us up to the fence this morning. I broke down the minute I touched it. I felt such a strong kinship with this young man. On the way back, I made sure nobody saw me crying.
Lee Fondakowski.
Greg was crying on the way back. I couldn't bring myself to tears, but I felt the same way. I have an interview this afternoon with Aaron Kreifels. That's the boy that found Matthew out there at the fence. I don't think I'm up for it right now. I'll see if someone else can do it.
So, I took off my bicycle at about 5 o'clock p.m. Wednesday night from my dorm, and I just kind of felt like going for a ride. So, I went to the top of Cactus Canyon, and I'm not super familiar with that area, so on the way back down, I didn't know where I was going. I was just sort of picking the way to go. Which, now it makes me think that God wanted me to find him, because there's no way that I was going to go that way. So I was in some really deep sand, and I wanted to turn around, but for some reason I kept going. And I went along, and there was this rock on the ground, and I drilled it. I went over the handlebars, and I ended up on the ground, and so I got up, and I was just kind of dusting myself off, and I was looking around, and I noticed something, which ended up to be Matt. And he was just lying there by a fence, and I just thought it was a scarecrow. I was like, Halloween's coming up, I thought it was a Halloween gag, so I didn't think much of it. So I got my bike, and I walked it around the fence that was there. It was a buck-type fence, and I got closer. And that's when I noticed his hair. And that was the major key to me noticing it was a human being, was his hair, because I thought it was a dummy or something, and but when I even noticed the chest going up and down, and I still thought it was a dummy. I thought it was some kind of mechanism, but when I noticed his hair, I knew it was a human being, so I ran as fast as I could. I ran to the nearest house and I called the police.
I responded to the call.
Officer Reggie Flutie.
When I got to the fence, at first, the only thing I could see was partially somebody's feet. So I got out of my vehicle and I raced over, and I seen what appeared to be a young man, about 13 or 14 years old, because he was so tiny, lying on the ground, tied to the bottom end of a pole. I did the best I could. He was covered in dry blood all over his head. There was dry blood underneath his body, and he was barely breathing. He was doing the best he could. I wanted to breathe for him, but I couldn't get his mouth open. His mouth wouldn't open for me. He was covered in, like I said, partially dry blood and blood all over his head. And the only place it appeared he did not have any blood was on his face, where he had been crying down his face. His head was distorted, it did not look normal, like he had a real harsh head wound.
I was working the emergency room the night Matthew Shepard was brought in. I don't think any of us can remember seeing a patient in that condition for a long time. I mean, those of us who've worked in big city hospitals have seen patients like this, but we have some people who've not worked in big city hospitals, and it's just not the kind of thing you'd expect here. You expect it from a car rolling down a hill at 80 miles an hour. You expect to see gross injuries from something like that, this horrendous, terrible thing. But you don't expect to see that from somebody doing that to another person. The ambulance report said it was a beating, so we knew.
And there was nothing I could do. I mean, if there was anything I could have done, I would have done it, but there was nothing. And I was yelling at the top of my lungs, trying to get something out of him, like, hey, wake up! Hello? But he didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't anything.
He was tied to the fence. His hands were thumbs out in what we call a cuffing position, the way we handcuff people. He was bound with real thin white rope that went around the bottom of the pole about 4 inches up off the ground. His shoes were missing. He was bound extremely tight, so I wanted to use my boot knife and I tried to slip it between Matthew's wrist and the rope, but I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further.
Your first thought is, well, certainly you'd like to think that it's somebody from out of town who comes through and beats somebody up. I mean, things like this happen, Stuff happens, and it happens in Laramie. But if there's somebody who has been beaten repeatedly, well, certainly I'd say that's something that offends us. I think that's a good word. It offends us.
He was bound so tight. I was finally able to get my boot knife through... we rolled him on his left side, and he quit breathing. So immediately, I put him back on his back, and that was just enough of an adjustment for me to cut him free. I seen the EMS unit trying to get a location, and when they finally got here, we put Matthew in a neck brace and put him on a backboard and scooted him out from underneath the fence. Rob drove the ambulance to Ivinson Hospital emergency room.
Now, the strange thing is, about 20 minutes before Matthew Shepard came in, Aaron McKinney was brought in by his girlfriend. I guess he had gone into a fight there that night back in town, so I'm working on Aaron and the ambulance comes in with Matthew. Now, at this point, I don't know that there's a connection at all, so I tell Aaron to wait and I go to treat Matthew. So there's Aaron in one room of the ER and Matthew in another, 2 doors down. Now, as soon as we saw Matthew, it was very obvious that his care was beyond our capabilities. I called the neurosurgeon at Poudre Valley, and he was on the road in an hour and 15 minutes, I think.
They showed me a picture. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew. I would have never recognized him.
Then, 2 days later, I found out the connection, and I was very struck. These were 2 kids. They were both my patients, and they were 2 kids. I took care of both of them, of both their bodies. And for a brief moment, I wondered if this is how God feels when he looks down on us, and how we are all his kids, our bodies, our souls. And I felt a great deal of compassion for both of them.
But no names were mentioned. To brutality, the crime was not mentioned. All that was mentioned was a man, Larry man, found beaten on the prairie, basically. Later in the evening, they mentioned his name, and I was like, it can't be. That's not my Matthew Shepard. That's not my student. That's not the person I've been meeting with.
I was in the coffee shop.
Romaine Patterson.
And someone pulled me aside and said, I don't know much, but they say there's been a young man beaten in Laramie, and they say his name's Matthew Shepard. And he said, do you think this could be our Matthew? And I said, well, yeah, it sounds like it could be our Matthew. So I called my sister Trish, and I said, tell me what you know. I'm just like, I need to know anything you know, because I don't know anything.
So I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and that's when the whole story came up on Channel 5 News, and it was just like, ba-boom.
More news reports kept rolling out. Young University of Wyoming student, his age, his description, and it was like, oh my God.
And I felt sick to my stomach, just instantly sick to my stomach, and I had to tell Romaine, yes, it was Matthew, it was your friend.
Well, I'll tell you what is overwhelming.
Matt, go.
I first find out about it, I go to class, walk out, boom, there it is in the branding iron. So I drive out to the nearest newsstand to buy a Laramie boomerang because I want more details. Buy that, go home. Before I can even open the paper, my boss calls me and he says...
Did you hear about what happened?
I'm like, yeah.
Was he in the bar last night?
I go, yes, he was.
You've got to get down here right away. We've got to talk about this. We've got to discuss what's going to go on.
By this time, I was starting to get upset, but still, the severity wasn't out yet.
It was a Thursday afternoon.
Rulone Stacy at Poudre Valley Hospital.
I got a call. We just got a kid in here from Wyoming, and it looks like he may be the victim of a hate crime. We've got a bunch of reporters here asking questions. And so we decided we needed one spokesperson, and as CEO, I'll do that and try to gather all of the information that I can.
And then I watched the 10 o'clock news that night, where they started speaking about the nature and the seriousness of it.
So I'm on the phone with Mickelson, and he's like...
We've got to get down to the arraignment so we can identify these guys and make sure these guys were in the bar last night.
So we go to the arraignment.
Today we turn to Laramie, Wyoming in the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are being tried for the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
The arraignment was on Friday, right around lunchtime. So I said, I'm just going. I took off. It's just down the street. So I walked a few blocks and I went. Has anybody told you about the arraignment? There were probably 100 people from town and just as many news media people by that point. And a lot more of the details about the case had come out. The fact that the perpetrators were kids, themselves, local kids that everyone here had some relationship to. And what everyone, I think, was waiting on pins and needles for was what would happen when the perpetrators walked in. And what happened, there were 200 people in the room at this point, and they walked in their complete orange jumpsuits and shackles, and you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. And then a judge came in and did a reading. It was a statement of the evidence that the prosecution has. It's a statement of the facts. And the reading of the facts was...
The essential facts are that the defendants Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson met Matthew Shepard at the Fireside Bar. And after Mr. Shepard confided that he was gay, the subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into living with them in their vehicle to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, both subjects tied their victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. Both defendants were later contacted by officers of the Laramie Police Department who observed inside the cab of their pickup a credit card and a pair of black patent leather shoes belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard.
I don't think there was one person left in the courtroom who wasn't crying by the end of it. It lasted maybe 5 minutes, but it kept getting more and more horrific, ending with...
Said defendants left the victim begging for his life.
Sergeant Payne, how could this happen? I think a lot of people just don't understand, and even I don't really understand how someone could do something like that. We have one of the most vocal populations of gay people in the state, and it's pretty much live and let live.
Laramie resident Jeffrey Lockwood.
My secret hope was that they were from somewhere else. That then, of course, you can create this distance. We don't grow children like that here. Well, it's pretty clear that we do grow children like that here.
So that was the arraignment, and my response was pretty catatonic. Not eating, not sleeping, don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details about the sheer brutality, motivations came out. And quite frankly, the media started to descend, and there was no time to reflect anymore.
Laramie, Wyoming, often called the gem city of the plains, is now the eye of the storm.
As a gay college student, like hospitalized in critical condition after severe beating, in a small city which builds itself as Wyoming's hometown, that's what people used to its gay men.
Daily basis.
It's a tough business,
as Matt Shepard knew, and as his friends all know, to be gay in cowboy country.
It was huge! Yeah, and there's Hers reporters everywhere, hundreds of them, which really adds a big dent in the town's population. And there was news trucks everywhere in town, and everywhere on campus. And we're not used to that type of exposure. We're not used to that type of attention.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter.
These people are like predators. Like this one journalist actually caught one of the judges in the bathroom at the urinal and was like asking him questions. And the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I please have some privacy?" And the journalist was like offended that he asked for privacy. I mean, this is not how journalism started, like the Gutenberg press, you know?
I'll tell you what, when hard copy came and taped me, I taped them at the exact same time. I have every word I ever said on tape. So if they ever try anything funny, they better watch their effing rear.
Wyoming Governor Jim Geringer, a first-term Republican up for re-election.
I am outraged and sickened by the heinous crime committed on Matthew Shepard. I extend my most heartfelt sympathies to the family.
Governor, you haven't pushed hate crime legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the people of Wyoming to not overreacting in a way that gives one group special rights over others. We will wait and see if the vicious beating and torture of Matthew Shepard was motivated by hate.
You've got the beginning of the news story and the graphics in the background, and it says, "Murder in Wyoming," and Wyoming's dripping red like it's got blood on it or something. And just, this is sensationalism. And we're here going, wait a minute, we got the guys in jail in less than a day. I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned,
Eileen and Gil Angen.
that we're not a good community. But we are! The majority of the people here are good people.
You get bad apples once in a while, and I think the gay community took this as an advantage. Said it was a good time for us to exploit this.
Bill McKinney, father of one of the accused.
Had this been a heterosexual these two boys decided to take out and rob, this would have never made it to national news. Now my son's guilty before he's even got a trial.
Look, I do think that the media actually made people accountable. Because they made people think. Because people are sitting in their homes, like, watching TV or listening to CNN or watching Dan Rather and going, "Jesus Christ, well, that's not how it is here." Well, how is it here?
Matthew Shepard medical update at 3 p.m. Saturday, October 10th.
By this point, I looked out there, and where there had been maybe 2 or 3 reporters, there were about 10 or 15 still photographers, another 20 or 30 reporters, and 10 video cameras. The parents had just arrived, and I'd barely introduced myself to them, and I looked out there and I thought, my gosh, what am I going to do? Matthew Shepard was admitted in critical condition approximately 9:15 p.m. October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive, and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a head fracture from behind his head to just above his right ear. This caused bleeding on the brain as well as pressure on the brain. There were also several lacerations to his head, face, and neck. Over the last 24 hours, Matthew's temperature has fluctuated from 98 to 106 degrees, and we have had difficulty controlling his temperature. Matthew's parents arrived at approximately 7 p.m. October 9th and are now at his bedside. The following statement is from them. We would like to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concern and fond wishes for Matthew's speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and goodwill, and we know that they are something that Matthew would appreciate too. We have a special request for the members of the media. Matthew is very much in need of his family at this time, and we ask that you respect our privacy as well as Matthew's so we can focus all of our efforts, thoughts, and love on our son. Thank you.
Please don't Matthew.
Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson pled not guilty to the charges. Their girlfriends, Tristan Price and Chastity Casey, also pled not guilty after being charged with accessories and after the fact. On our next trip, we visit the Chief Investigating Officer of the case, Detective Rob Debris of the Albany County Sheriff's Department.
I guess the thing that bothered me the most was when I went down to Twitter Valley, where Matthew was seeing him, touching him. As a homicide detective, you look at bodies. This poor boy is sitting here, fighting all his life, trying to make it. I wanted it so by the book, you know?
I keep seeing that picture in my head when I found him.
Aaron Kreifels.
And it's not pleasant whatsoever. I don't want it to be there. I want to, get it out. And that's the biggest thing for me, is seeing that picture in my head. And it's unbelievable that I happen to be the person that found him. Because the big question with me, with my religion, is why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself, and I was irrationally terrified.
Catherine Connolly.
So what this means is not letting my 12-year-old son walk the streets alone, seeing a truck do a U-turn and thinking it's coming after me, having to stop because I'm shaking so bad, when in fact the truck was not coming after me, but my reaction was to have my heart in my mouth.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I did have an opportunity.
Matt Galloway.
If I had amazing hindsight of 2020 to have stopped what occurred, and I keep thinking I should have noticed. These guys shouldn't have been talking to this guy. I shouldn't have had my head down when I was washing dishes for those 20 seconds. Things I could have done. What the hell was I thinking?
So you do a lot of studying, and you spend hours and hours and hours, and you study and study and study, and you talk to your officers and make sure that they understand, and you talk to your witnesses again, and it's always coming back to, I get this flash of seeing Matthew. I wanted it so tight that there was no way that they were going to get out of this.
One of the things that happened when I got to the fence,
Reggie Flutie.
was that there was such an overwhelming amount of blood, and we tried to wear protective gloves, but we had a really cheap sheriff at the time, and he bought us these really crappy gloves. So, you put them on, but they kept breaking, so eventually you just ran out of gloves. So you think, don't hesitate, That's what your mind tells you. Don't hesitate. You have to keep moving and help Matthew find an airway. That's what your mind tells you,
The thing I wasn't telling you before is that Reggie's my daughter.
Marge Murray.
And when she first told me she wanted to be a police officer, I thought there was not a better choice for her. She could handle whatever came her way.
About a day and a half later, the hospital called me and told me that Matthew had HIV. And they said, you've had a bad exposure and you've been exposed. And you see, I've been building a lean-to for my llamas, so I had a bunch of open cuts in my hand. And so I was basically screwed. And you think, oh shoot,
Would you like to talk about losing sleep?
So I called the doctor and I said, what do I do? And he said, well, get up here. So I went up there and they started me on the ATZ drugs immediately.
Now they told me that if those drugs are administered 36 hours after you've been exposed, it can maybe stop you getting the disease.
That is a mean, nasty medicine. Mean. I lost 10 pounds and a lot of my hair. Yeah.
Now, I just want to lash out at somebody. Not at Matthew. Please understand. None of us were ever mad at Matthew. But I maybe wanted to squeeze McKinney's head off. And I think about the Henderson. And two absolute human beings can cause so much grief for so many people. It has been terrible for my whole family. But mostly for her and her kids.
I think it brought home to my girls what their mom does for a living.
Well, Reggie, you know what I'm going to tell you now.
And my parents, they both said the same damn thing.
You're quitting this damn job.
And it's a parent thing, Because they're terribly proud of you, whether you do a good job handling a drunk or a case like this, and they just don't want you getting hurt,
Like I said, there's a right way and a wrong way. And then there's Reggie's way.
So finally, I just said, oh, for God's sake, lighten up, Francis.
You are so stubborn.
They tell me I'm stubborn, but I don't believe them. I see it as I've heard your opinion and now here's mine. I'm 39 years old. What are they gonna do, spank me?
Reggie, don't give me any ideas.
That'd be pretty funny. What can they say?
I just hope she doesn't go before me. I just couldn't handle that.
University of Wyoming President Philip Dubois.
Well, this young person read my statement on the Denver Post story and sent me an email directly, and it said,
You and the straight people of Laramie and Wyoming are guilty of the beating of Matthew Shepard, just like the Germans are guilty of the deaths of the Jews, the gypsies, and the homosexuals. You have taught your straight children to hate their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, unless and until you realize that Matthew Shepard's bleeding wasn't some random occurrence, wasn't the work of some random crazies. You have Matthew's blood on your hands.
And, well, I just can't begin to tell you what that does to you. And it's like, you can't possibly know what I'm thinking. You can't possibly know what this has done to me, or my family, or my community.
That week alone, vigils for Matthew were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs. Soon after, in Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Nashville, Minneapolis, and Portland, Maine, among others. In Los Angeles, 5,000 people gathered. And in New York City, a political rally ended in civil disobedience and hundreds of arrests. And the Poudre Valley Hospital website received close to 1 million visitors from across the country, all expressing hope for Matthew's recovery.
Matthew Shepard medical update for 9 a.m. Sunday, October 11th.
As of 9 a.m. today, Matthew Shepard remains in critical condition. The family continues to emphasize that the media respect their privacy. The family would also like to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concern. Thank you.
There are certain things when I sit in church.
Jedediah Schultz.
And the Reverend will tell you flat out that he doesn't agree with homosexuality. And I don't know, I feel like I'm still learning about myself, and I don't know enough about certain issues to make a decision that says homosexuality is right. When you've been raised your whole life to believe that is wrong, and right now I would say that I don't agree with it, maybe that's just because I couldn't do it. And speaking in religious terms, I don't think that's how God intended it to happen. I don't think that's how God intended it to happen. But I don't hate homosexuals, and I'm not going to persecute them or anything like that. It's not going to be getting in the way between me and the other person at all.
Well, it's preached in schools that being gay is alright, and yada yada yada.
Conrad Miller.
And if my kids were to ask me, I'd say, well, this is what gay people do. This is what animals do, okay? Then I'd say, this is the life. This is the lifestyle. Then I'd tell them, this is why I believe it's wrong.
There are more gay people around than what you think.
Murdoch.
It doesn't bother anybody because most of them that are gay or lesbian, they know damn well who to talk to. If you step out of line, you're asking for it. Some people are saying he made a pass at them. You don't pick up regular people. I'm not excusing their actions, but it made me feel a little better because it's partially Matthew Shepard's fault and partially the guys who did it. You know, maybe it's 50-50.
Yes, as a lesbian, I was more concerned for my safety.
Zachy Salmon.
And I think we all were, and I think it's because somewhere inside we knew it could happen to us at any time, you know? I would be afraid to walk down the street and display any sort of physical affection for my partner. You just don't do that here in Laramie.
You know, there's this whole concept. You leave me alone, I leave you alone.
Jonas Slonaker.
It's even in some of the Western literature, you know, live and let live. That's such crap. I tell my friends that. Even some of my gay friends bring it up. I'm just like, that's such crap. You know, basically what it boils down to is that if I don't tell you I'm a fag, you don't beat the crap out of me. What's so great about that? That's a great philosophy.
We went to the candle vigil.
Zubaida Ula.
And it was so good to be with people who felt like crap. I kept feeling like I didn't deserve to feel that bad, you know? And someone got up there and he said blah, 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 blah. And then he said, I'm saying it wrong. But basically he said, come on guys, let's show the world that Laramie is not this kind of town. But it is that kind of town. If it wasn't this kind of town, then why did this happen here? I mean, you know what I mean, that's a lie because it happened here. So how is it not the kind of town where this sort of thing happens? That's just like looking at an Escher painting and getting all confused. It's just totally circular logic. Like, how can you even say that? And we have to mourn this. And we have to be sad that we live in a town, a state, a country where stuff like this happens. I mean, these are people trying to distance themselves from this crime. But we need to own this crime, I feel. Everyone needs to own this. We are like this. We are like this. We are like this.
I was at the fireside one afternoon where I ran into two of Aaron McKinney's longtime friends, Shannon and Jen. You knew Aaron well, right?
Yeah, we both did. When I first found out, I thought it was really terrible. I don't know whether Aaron was messed up or whether he was coming down or what, but Matthew had money. God, he had better clothes than I did. Matthew was a little rich bitch.
You shouldn't call him a rich bitch, though. That's not right.
Well, I'm not saying he's a bad guy either because he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Said the wrong things, and I'll tell you, there's times I was messed up on meth and I thought about going out and robbing. I mean, I never did, but it was there. It's easy money.
Aaron's done it. They both done it. I know one night they went to Cheyenne to go do it and came back with probably $300. I don't know if they ever chose like gay people as their particular targets before, but anyone that looked like they had a lot of money and that could outnumber or overpower them was fair game.
Do you believe there's any homophobia at all that contributed to some of this?
Probably. It probably would have pissed him off that Matthew was gay, because he didn't like the gay people I've seen him interact with. He was fine as long as, you know, they didn't hit on him, as long as it didn't come up.
As long as they weren't doing it in front of him.
Do you get the impression that he knew other gay people?
I'm sure that he knows people that are gay. He used to work over up at KFC, and there's a couple people there that, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because half the people I know here in Laramie are gay.
What would you say to Aaron right now if you saw him?
First of all, I'd ask him if he'd do any more tweet.
If I saw Aaron out, I'd say, man, why'd you F up like that? But I want to make sure he's doing good in there. I'm sure he is. I probably just want to, like, hang out with him.
Smoke a bowl with him.
I bet he wants one so bad.
You guys both at the Laramie High?
Yeah, can't you tell? We're a product of our society.
On a day that is traditionally given over to nothing more profound than the collegiate exuberance of the fortunes of the University of Wyoming football team, this community on the High Plains had a different kind of homecoming Saturday, as many searched their souls in the wake of a vicious, apparent anti-gay hate crime.
University President Philip Dubois. This was homecoming weekend, and there was a lot of people in town, and there's a homecoming parade that's scheduled, and all the students had organized to tag on to the back of it, you know, the banner supporting Matthew, and everyone was wearing the armbands that the students had created.
I live in the center of town.
Harry Woods.
And my apartment has windows on two opposite streets. One goes north and one goes south, and that's exactly the homecoming parade route. Now, on the day of the parade, I had a cast on my leg because of a fall, and I was very disappointed because I had really wanted to walk with the people who were marching for Matthew, but I couldn't. So I watched from my window, and it was just, I'm 52 years old, and I'm gay. I've lived here many years, and I've seen a lot. And I was very moved when I saw the tag at the end of the homecoming parade. About 100 people all marching behind a banner for Matthew Shepard. So then the parade went down to the end of the street to make a U-turn, and I went to the other side of my apartment to wait for it to come south down the other street.
I was right up in front where we were holding the banner for Matthew, and let me tell you, I've never had goosebumps so long in my life. It was incredible, a mass of people, families, mothers with their 6-year-old kids, tying these armbands around their 6-year-old arms and explaining to them why they should be wearing an armband. Just amazing. I mean, it was absolutely one of the most beautiful things I've ever done in my life.
So 10 minutes goes by, and sure enough, the parade starts to come down the street. And that's when I noticed the most incredible thing. As the parade started coming down the street, the number of people marching for Matthew Shepard had grown 5 times. There were at least 500 people marching for Matthew Shepard. 500 people, can you imagine? And people just kept joining in, and you know what? I started to cry. Tears were just streaming down my face, and I thought, thank God I got to see this in my lifetime. And my second thought was, thank you, Matt.
I haven't really been all that involved, per se. My husband's a highway patrolman, so that's the only way I've really known about it. And when I first found out, I just thought it was horrible. I can't. Nobody deserves that. I don't care who you are. But the other thing that happened at the same time is that was not brought out, that patrolman was killed. And there was nothing. They didn't say anything about the old man that killed him. He was driving down the road, and he shouldn't have been driving, and he killed him. And there was just a little piece in the paper. I mean, we lost one of our guys. My husband worked with him. He was brand new on the force, but here's one of ours, and there's just this little piece in the paper. And a lot of it is my feeling that they're portraying Matthew Shepard as a saint. They're making him out to be a martyr, and I don't think he was. I don't think he was that pure. I didn't know him, but just the things I found out is just scary. You know, about his character and spreading AIDS and just the kind of person he was. He was just a barfly. And I think he pushed himself around. I think he flaunted it. Everybody's got problems. Why they exemplified him, I don't know. What's the difference if you're gay? A hate crime is a hate crime. If you murder somebody, you hate him. It has nothing to do with if you're gay or a prostitute or whatever. I don't understand. I don't understand.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
This is one of our last days on our second trip to Laramie. Greg and I have been conducting interviews nonstop, and we are exhausted.
We are to meet with Father Roger at 7:30 this morning. I wanted to skip the meeting altogether, but we have to follow through to the end. So here we go, 7:30 a.m., 2 queers and a Catholic priest.
Matthew Shepard has served us well. You realize that? He has served us well. I do not mean to condemn Matthew to perfection, but I cannot mention anyone who has done more for his community than Matthew has. But I'm not going to sit here and say I was a bold guy, no fear. I was scared. I was very vocal in my community when this happened. I thought, should we call the bishop and ask for his permission to host the vigils? And I thought, hell no, I'm not doing that. His permission doesn't make it correct. I'm not knocking bishops, but what is correct is correct. You people on a search here, though, I will say this. I will trust that if you write a play of this, that you say it right, say it correct. I think you have a responsibility to do this. Don't make matters worse. You think violence is what they did to Matthew? They did do violence to Matthew. But do you realize every time you called a fag or a les or whatever?
Or a dyke.
Dyke, yeah, Dyke. Do you realize that is violence? That is the seed of violence. I would resent it immensely if you used anything I said to cultivate that kind of violence, even in its smallest form. I'd resent it immensely. You needed to know that.
Thank you, Father, for saying that.
Just deal with what is true. You know what is true. You need to do your best to say correct.
Ding, 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 ding.
Hello? Reverend?
Yes, hello?
I believe your wife told you a bit about why I'm contacting you.
Yes, she did, and let me tell you, I don't think I really want to talk to anyone about any of this, incident. You see, I am somewhat involved, and I just don't think
Yes, I completely understand, and I don't blame you. You know, I went to your services on Sunday.
You went to the services?
Yes, I did.
On Sunday?
Yes, this past Sunday.
Did I meet you?
Yes, you welcomed me at the beginning, I believe.
I see. Well, let me tell you, I am not afraid to be controversial or speak my mind, and that is not necessarily the views of my congregation per se. Now, as I said, I am somewhat involved. The girlfriend of the accused is a member of our congregation, and one of the accused has visited.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those two, the accused, have forfeited their lives. We've been after the two I mentioned for ages, trying to get them to live right, to do right. Now, one boy is on suicide watch, and I'm working with him. And until they put him in the chair and turn on the juice, I will work for his salvation. Now, I believe they deserve the death penalty, and I will try my best to deal with them spiritually.
Right, I understand.
Now, as for the victim, I know that lifestyle is legal, but I will tell you one thing. I hope that as Matthew Shepard was tied to that fence, that he had a chance to reflect on a moment when someone had spoken the word of the Lord to him, and that before he slipped into a coma, he had a chance to reflect on his lifestyle.
Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate your speaking with me.
It was about 11:30 that night. I had just barely gone to bed, and Margot, our chief operating officer, called, and she said, his blood pressure has started to drop. Well, let's just wait and see. And then she called me at about 10 after, and he had just died. So, I got up, and I got dressed, and I went into the ICU where the family was, and Judy came up to me, and she put her arms around me, and I put my arms around her, and we just stood there, honestly, for about 10 minutes, just because what else do you do? And then we had to sit and talk about things that you just... Dennis, it's public knowledge, and I'm going to go out there and tell the world that this has happened. Because by now it was clear to us that it was the world, and it was the whole world. So, Judy told me what she wanted me to say, and I went out at 4:00 a.m.
Matthew Shepard, medical update for 4:30 a.m., Monday, October 12th.
At approximately 12 midnight, October 12th, Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified his family, who were already at the hospital. At 12:53 a.m., Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside. The family did release the following statement. The family would like me to express their sincerest gratitude to the entire world for their overwhelming response for their son. The family was grateful that they did not have to make a decision regarding whether or not to continue the life support for their son. Like a good son, he was caring to the end and removed all stress or guilt from the family. He came into this world premature and left this world premature. Matthew's mother said, "Go home and hug your kids. And don't let a day go by without telling them that you love them." And I don't know how I let that happen. I lost it on national television. But I had been up for like 72 hours straight, and I'd gone home and gone to bed for like a half an hour, and I had to get up and come in, and maybe I was just away, I don't know, but in a moment of complete brain deadness, while I was out there reading that statement, I thought about my own 4 daughters and go home and hug your kids. She doesn't have her kid anymore. And here I am thinking, this is so lame. And then we started to get people sending us emails and letters, and most of them were generally very kind, but this guy wrote me and he said, "Do you cry like a baby on TV for all your patients or just the faggots?" And as I told you before, homosexuality is not a lifestyle in which I agree, but having been thrown into this, I guess I didn't understand the magnitude in which some people hate. And of all the letters we got, there were maybe 2 or 3 that were like that. But most of them were thank you for the caring and compassion. And Matthew had caring and compassion from the moment he got here.
I spoke to Doc last night and told him that we'll be coming out for the upcoming trials of Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. This is what he had to say.
I'll tell you what, if they put those 2 boys to death, then that would go against everything that Matt would be thinking about on them, because Matt would not want those 2 to die. He'd want to leave them with hope. H-O-P-E. Just like the whole world hoped that Matt would survive. The whole thing, you see, the whole thing, ropes around hope. H-O-P-E. On the day of the funeral, it was snowing so bad, big, huge, wet snowflakes. And as I got there were thousands of people in just black with umbrellas everywhere. And there were 2 churches, one for immediate family, invited guests, people of that nature, and the other for everyone else who wanted to be there. And still, hundreds of people outside that couldn't fit into either of the churches. And there was a big park outside the church, and that's where these people were, and that park was full.
The liturgy today is an Easter liturgy. It finds its meaning in the resurrection. The service invites your full participation. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray.
And I guess it was like the worst storm that they had had.
Tiffany Edwards.
Like, that anybody could ever tell. Like, trees fell down and the power went out for a couple of days because of it. And I just thought, it's like the forces of the universe at work, you know? Like, whatever higher spirit it is that blows storms was blowing this storm.
For our brother Matthew, let us pray to our Lord Jesus Christ, who said, I am the resurrection and the life. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord. My most striking memory from
Martha
the
and Mary
funeral.
in their distress. Draw near to us who mourn for Matthew,
Is seeing
and dry the
Reverend
tears of those who
from
weep.
Kansas.
We pray
That
to the
scene go
Lord.
up in the park.
Do you believe in the Bible? Do you believe you're supposed to separate the precious from the vile? You don't believe that part of the Bible? You stand over there ignorant of the fact that the Bible, 2 times,
Kids who got up early came over and started yelling at
talks
these
about
people
God's
from
hate.
The
We
French
would not be here if this was just another murder the state is going to have to deal with. The state has to deal with hundreds of murders every single day. But this murder is different because the fags are trying to turn Matthew Shepard into a poster boy for the gay lifestyle, and we're going to answer to it. It's just that simple.
An amazing grace.
6 months later, we returned to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, the first of the 2 perpetrators. It was to be a capital murder trial. When we got to the courthouse, Fred Phelps was already there.
You don't like that attribute of God? That perfect of attribute of God. Well, we love that attribute of God, and we're going to preach it because God's hatred is pure. It's a determination that He's going to send some people to hell. That's God's hatred.
After hearing Fred Phelps protesting at Matthew's funeral, and then finding out he was coming to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, I decided that someone needed to stand toe-to-toe with this guy and show the differences. And I think at times like this, when we're talking about hatred as much as the nation is right now, that someone needs to show that there is a better way of dealing with that kind of hatred. And so our idea is to dress up like angels. And so we've designed an angel outfit. For our wings are huge. They're like big-ass wings. And there'll be 10 to 12 of us that are angels. What we're gonna do is we're gonna encircle Phelps. And because of our big wings, we're gonna completely block him. So this big band of angels comes in. We don't say an effing word. We just turn our backs to him and we stand there. And we are a group of people bringing forth a message of peace and love and compassion. And we're calling it Angel Action. Yeah, this 21-year-old little lesbian is ready to walk the line with him. And I knew my angels were going to be taking the brunt of all he had to yell and say. I mean, we were going to be blocking his view, and he was going to be, like, pissed off to all hell. So I went out and bought all my angels earplugs.
The court is now in session.
Romaine Patterson's sister, Trish Steger.
As soon as they started jury selection, I had people coming into my shop with, I don't want to be on this trial, I hope they don't call me, or, oh my gosh, I've been called, how do I get off? Just trying to get as far away from this as they could. very fearful they were going to have to serve on that jury. And I heard that Henderson had to sit in the courtroom while they questioned prospective jurors. And I heard that one of the questions was, would you be willing to put this person to death? And I understand a lot of the comments were, yes, I would.
Yes, I would, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
No problem.
Well, could you imagine hearing that? Juror after juror after juror?
You entered a not guilty plea earlier, Mr. Henderson, but I understand you wish to change your plea today. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You understand, Mr. Henderson, that the recommended term here is 2 life sentences?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that those may run concurrently or they may run consecutively?
Yes, sir.
I will now ask you how you wish to plead. Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Before the court decides whether the sentences are to run concurrently or consecutively, I understand there are statements to be made by at least one individual.
This is an excerpt from a statement made to the court by Lucy Thompson.
As the grandmother and the person who raised Russell, along with my family, we've written the following statement. Our hearts ache for the pain and the suffering the Shepards have gone through. We've prayed for you since the very beginning. Many times throughout the day, I have thought about Matt, and we will continue to pray for you, as we know your pain will never go away. You have shown such mercy in allowing us to have this plea, and we are so grateful that you are giving us all the opportunity to live. Your Honor, as you sentence Russell, we plead that you will do it concurrently, 2 life terms. The Russell we know and love, we plead, Your Honor, to not take Russell completely out of our lives forever.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, you have a constitutional right to make a statement if you would like to do so. Do you have anything you would like to say?
Yes, I would, Your Honor. Mr. and Mrs. Shepard, there's not a moment that goes by that I do not see what happened that night. I know what I did was wrong, and I regret it greatly. You have my greatest sympathy for what happened. I hope that one day you'll be able to find in your hearts to forgive me. Your Honor, I know what I did is wrong. I am sorry for what I did, and I am ready to pay my debt for what I did.
Mr. Henderson, you drove the vehicle that took Matthew Shepard to his death. You bound him to that fence in order that he might be more savagely beaten, in order that he might not escape to tell his tale. You left him out there for 18 hours, knowing full well he was there, perhaps having the opportunity to save his life, and you did nothing. This court does not believe you feel any true remorse for your part in this matter, and I wonder whether you fully realize the gravity of what you've done. The court finds it appropriate, therefore, that the sentencing be as follows. As to count 3, that being felony murder with robbery, you're to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. On count 1, kidnapping, you're to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. Sentencing to count 1 to run consecutive to sentencing for count 3.
After the hearing, we met with Russell Henderson's Mormon home teacher.
I've known Russell's family for 38 years. Russell's only 21, so I've known him his entire life. I ordained Russell a priest of the Mormon church, so when this happened, you can imagine disbelief. After the sentencing, the church held a disciplinary council, and the result of that meeting was to excommunicate Russell from the church. Basically what that means is your name is taken off all records of the church, so you just disappear. Russell's reaction to that was not positive. It hurt him, and it hurt him too, to realize at that point how serious a transgression he had committed. But I will not desert Russell. That's a matter of my religion and my friendship with the family.
Before we left Laramie, we met again with Rebecca Hilliker at the legal department. She's producing Angels in America this year at the university.
I think that's the focus that the university has taken, is that we have a lot of work to do, that we have an obligation to reach our students. And the question is, how do we move? How do we reach a whole state where there's some really deep-seated hostility towards gays? How do you reach them? This is the beginning, and guess who's auditioning for the lead?
My parents!
Jedediah Schultz.
My parents were like, what plays are you doing at school this year? And I was like, Angels in America, and I told them the whole list of plays. And they're like, Angels in America? Is that play you did in high school? That scene you did in high school? And I was like, yeah. And then she goes, huh, are you gonna audition for it? And I was like, yeah. And then we got into this huge argument, and the best thing I had them all is, well, they had just seen me in a performance of Macbeth. I just played a murderer, and well, I killed a little kid, Lady Macduff, and 2 other guys, and she goes, homosexuality is a sin. And then she kept on saying that, and I go, Mom, I just played a murder tonight, and you didn't seem to have a problem with that. I tell you, I've never prepared this much for an audition in my life. Never ever, not even close.
Not having to deal that much with the gay society here in Laramie.
Detective Sergeant Rob Debris.
Well, once we started getting onto the case and we started talking to people that were gay and finding out what their underlying fears were, well, then it kind of hit home. This is America. You don't have the right to feel that fear. And I know we're going to have some people that hold on to the old ideals, and I was probably one of them 14 months ago. But I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to put up with it. And if they don't like my views on it, fine. The door goes both ways. I've already lost a couple of my buddies. I don't care. I feel more comfortable, and I can sleep at night.
Well, you're tested every 3 months.
Reggie's duty.
So I was able to get the DNA work done. So I went to Fort Collins, and they drew my blood there, and then they flew it to Michigan and did all the DNA work there. So, which was a week later, I knew I was negative for good.
I'll tell you, we were all on our knees saying, Hail Mary.
You're just so elated, you know? And you think, thank God.
So what's the first thing she does?
I stuck my tongue right in my husband's mouth. I was just so happy, you know? And you think, I hope I did the service well. I hope I did it with some integrity. You're just so happy, you know? And my daughters, they just bawled.
They were so happy.
And the force.
Oh boy.
We went out and we got trashed. Everyone was buying me drinks. It was great. Everyone was hugging and crying, and I kissed everybody who walked through the door.
Reggie, they don't need to know that.
I didn't care if they're male or female. They each got a kiss on the lips.
Now what did I just say? Don't you understand?
I'll get over it, Ma.
Almost a year to the day that Matthew Shepard died, the trial for Aaron James McKinney was set to begin.
Probably the question most of you have on your mind is how the McKinney case will proceed.
Cal Rarucha, prosecuting attorney.
And it is a decision of the county attorney that this will definitely be a death penalty case.
Part of me wants McKinney to get it, but I'm not proud of that. I was on and off, and then off and on. I can't say what I would do. I'm too personally involved.
Oh, I believe in the death penalty 100%. Because I want to make sure that guy dies, you know? This is one instance where I truly believe with all my heart an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
I don't know about the death penalty, but I'll tell you what. I don't ever want to see those guys walk out of Rollins Penitentiary again. I'll pay my nickel, whatever my little percentage of tax, nickel a day, to make sure that they stay in there, and definitely never see society again, and definitely never come into my bar again.
I don't believe in the death penalty. It's too much for me. I don't believe that one man should be killed for redemption as his having killed another. Two wrongs don't make a right.
How can I protest if the Shepards want McKinney dead? I just can't interfere with that. But on a personal level, I knew Aaron in grade school. We didn't call him Aaron. He was called AJ. How can we put AJ McKinney to death?
I think right now our most important teachers are Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. They must be our teachers. How did you learn? How did we as a society teach you to do that? You see, I don't think many people let them be their teachers, but I would find it wonderful if the judge said, in addition to your sentence, you must tell your story. You must tell your story.
All rise. State of Wyoming versus Aaron James McKinney. Docket number 6381. The Honorable Pardon R. Floyd presiding. The court is now in session.
During the trial, the prosecution played a tape of his confession. Click.
My name is Rob DeVries, Sergeant for the Sheriff's Office. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can may be used against you in the court of law.
Click. The following is an excerpt of that confession. Click.
Okay, so you guys, you and Russ, you're at the fireside. You're at the fireside by yourselves, right?
Yeah.
Okay, where'd you go after you left the fireside?
Some kid wanted to ride home.
What's he look like?
Like a queer, such a queer dude.
Like a queer?
Yeah, bad, you know?
Okay, how'd you meet him?
Well, he wanted to ride home, and I was thinking, well, the dude's drunk, so let's just take him home.
So when did you and Russ start talking about jacking him up?
We kind of talked about it at the bar.
Okay, what happened next?
We drove out past Walmart, and when we got over there, he starts grabbing my leg and grabbing my genitals. I'm like, look, I'm not an ethnic faggot, so if you touch me again, you're gonna get it. I don't know what the hell he was trying to do, but I beat him up pretty bad. Think I killed him.
What'd you beat him with?
Blacked out, my fist, my pistol, the butt of the gun. I don't know, I had a few beers, and I don't know. It was like I could see what was happening, but somebody else was doing it.
So what was the first thing he said or did in the truck that made you want to hit him?
He put his hand on my leg, slid it down as if he was going to.
When the defense team argued that McKinney did what he did because Matthew made a pass at him, I just wanted to vomit. Because that's like saying it's okay. It's like the Twinkie defense. When Harvey Milk was killed by that guy, it's the same thing.
As much as a part of me didn't want the defense of them saying that it was a gay bashing or was gay panic, part of me is really grateful because I was really scared that in the trial, they were gonna say it was a robbery, or it was about drugs. When they used gay panic as their defense, I felt, this is good. If nothing else, the truth is going to be told. The truth is coming out. Click!
Did he ever try to defend himself against you, try and hit you back?
Sort of. He tries little swings or whatever, but he wasn't very effective.
Okay, so how many times did you hit him inside the truck before you stopped where you left him?
I probably hit him 2 or 3, yeah, 3 times with my fist, about 6 times with the pistol.
Okay, so I'm assuming Russ kind of dragged him to the fence and tied him up?
Something like that. I just remember at first Russ was laughing, and then he got pretty scared.
Was Matthew conscious when you guys tied him up?
Yeah, I told him not to look at my license plate, so I was pretty scared he was going to tell the police. So I asked him what my license plate said, and he read it, and that's why I hit him a few more times.
And just to be sure, so obviously, you don't like gay people.
No, I don't.
Would you say that you hate them?
I wouldn't say that I hate them, but when they start coming on to me or anything like that, I get pretty aggravated.
Did he threaten you?
This gay dude?
Yeah.
Not really.
Can you answer me this one thing? Why did you guys take his shoes?
I don't know. Now, I'll never get to see my son again.
I don't know, you're probably going to court sometime today.
Today? So I'll just be guilty or not guilty today?
No. Today's just the arraignment.
He's gonna die for sure?
There's no doubt that Mr. Shepard is going to die.
So are they gonna give me 25 to life or give me the death penalty? Just get it over with.
That's not our job, that's up to the judge and the jury.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled case, after having well and truly tried the matter, unanimously find as follows. As to the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of aggravated robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree felony murder, kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty.
Aaron McKinney was found guilty of felony murder, so the jury could give him the death penalty. The next evening, Judy and Dennis Shepard were approached by McKinney's defense team who pled for their client's life. The prosecution indicated that they would refer to the family on whether to pursue the death penalty. The next morning, Dennis Shepard made a statement to the court. Here are some of what he said.
My son Matthew didn't look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated and wore braces from the age of 13 until the day he died. However, in his all too brief life, my son proved that he was a winner. On October 6th, 1998, my son tried to show the world that he could win again. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero lost. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero died 50 days before his 22nd birthday. I keep wondering the same things I did when I first saw him in that hospital. What would he have become? How could he have changed his piece of the world to make it better? Matt officially died in a hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado. He actually died on the outskirts of Laramie, tied to a fence. You, Mr. McKinney, with your friend, Mr. Henderson, left him out there by himself, but he wasn't alone. He had friends with him, lifelong friends that he had grown up with. You're probably wondering who these friends were. First, he had the beautiful night sky and the same stars and moon we used to look at through a telescope. Then, he had the daylight and the sun to shine on him. And through it all, he was breathing in the scent of pine trees from the snowy range. He heard the wind, the ever-present Wyoming wind, for the last time. He had one more friend with him. He had God. And I feel better knowing he wasn't alone. Matt's beating, hospitalization, and funeral focused worldwide attention on hate. Good is coming out of evil. I miss my son, but I am proud to be able to say that he is my son. Judy has been quoted as being against the death penalty. It has been said that Matt was against the death penalty. Both of these statements are wrong. Matt believed that there were some crimes and incidents that justified the death penalty. I too believe in the death penalty. I would like nothing better than to see you die, Mr. McKinney. However,
It is time to begin the healing process. To show mercy to someone who refused to show any mercy. Mr. McKinney, I am going to grant you life, as hard as it is for me to do so, because of Matthew. Every time you celebrate Christmas, a birthday, the 4th of July, remember that Matt isn't. Every time you wake up in that prison cell, remember that you had the opportunity and the ability to stop your actions that night. You have robbed me of something very precious, and I will never forgive you for that. Mr. McKinney, I give you life in the memory of one who no longer lives. May you have a long life, and may you thank Matthew every day for it.
Me and Debris hugged and cried, and everyone had tears in their eyes. You're just so thankful, you know? And Mr. Shepard was crying, and that just got me bawling, and everyone just...
This is all we've lived and breathed for a year. Daily. This has been my case. Daily.
Maybe now we can finally go on and quit being stuck, you know?
It just hit me today, the minute that I got out of the courthouse, that the reason that God wanted me to find him is for he didn't have to die out there alone, you know? And if I wouldn't have come along, they wouldn't have found him for a couple of weeks at least. So it makes me feel really good knowing that he didn't have to die there alone.
I'm just glad it's over. I really am. Testifying in that trial has been one of the hardest things I've ever done. And don't get me wrong, I love the stage. I really do. I love it. But it's hard because what you have is you have lawyers questioning you from this angle, but your answers have to be funneling this way to the jury. So what you have to do is you have to establish a funneling system, and that's hard for me because I'm a natural conversationalist. So it's a natural instinct when someone asks you a question to look at that person and make eye contact. But it's tough when you literally have to scoot over, change your position, in effect, funnel your answers to where the jury is. But I was able to do that several times throughout the course of my testimony.
On our last trip, I had the good fortune of seeing Jedediah Schultz play the role of Pryor in Angels in America. After our performance, we spoke.
I hadn't for the longest time let myself become personally involved in Matthew Shepard's thing. It didn't seem real. It just seemed way blown out of proportion. Matthew Shepard was a name instead of an individual. And I don't know, it's just so weird, man. It's just so weird. I just feel bad just for all stuff that I said for the person I used to be. That's why I want to hear those interviews from last year, to hear the person that I used to be. I can't believe I ever said that stuff about homosexuals, you know? How did I really let that stuff make me think that you were different from me?
This is Romaine Patterson.
Well, a year ago, I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal. And now, now it's obviously changed in the fact that, throughout the last year, I've really realized my role in taking my part. So now, instead of going to school to be in music, I'm going to school for communications and political science. Because I have a career in political activism. Actually, I just recently found out I was going to be honored in Washington, D.C. from the Anti-Defamation League. And whenever I think of the Angels or all the speaking that I've done, you know, Matthew gave me. Matthew's like guiding this little path with this light for me to walk down. And whenever we get to like a door, he just opens it and he just says, okay, next step. And if I get to be a rock star on the side, okay.
This is Jonas Slonaker.
Change is not an easy thing. I don't think people are up for it around here. They got what they wanted. Those two boys got what they deserved, and we look good now. Justice has been served, the OK Corral, we shot down the villains, sent the prostitutes on the train, the town's cleared up, and we don't have to talk about it anymore. It's been a year since Matthew Shepard has died, and nobody anywhere has passed anything in Wyoming. Any state, any town, nobody anywhere has passed any kind of laws. Anti-discrimination laws, hate crime legislations, nobody anywhere has passed anything. What has come out of this? What has come out of this that is concrete or lasting?
We all said we would meet again one last time at the fence.
I've been up to that site in my limousine, okay? And I remember the night that he and I drove around together, and he said, Laramie sparkles, doesn't it? And from where he was, up there, sitting exactly where he was, up there, Laramie sparkles with a low-lying cloud. It's the blue lights reflecting off the clouds from the airport, and it goes psst, 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 psst. right over the whole city. I mean, it just blows you away. And Matt was in that spot, and I can just picture in his eyes. I can just picture what he was seeing. The last thing he saw on this earth was the sparkling lights.
We spent the past 2 days packing our materials and saying our goodbyes. We've been here 6 times and conducted over 200 interviews. Jedediah cried when he said goodbye.
Marge wished us luck, and when we asked her how Laramie would feel seeing a play about itself, she said,
I think we'd enjoyed it. To show we're not the hellhole of the earth would be nice. But that is up to how you portray us. And that in turn is up to how Laramie behaves.
As we were getting off the phone, she said to me,
Now you take care. I love you, honey.
Doc asked one to negotiate a book on the whole event, and Galloway offered me and the rest of the crew a place to stay if and when we came back out to Laramie. And you all seem pretty interested to know there'll be open auditions for the play.
We left Laramie at about 7 in the evening. On the way to Denver, I looked in my rearview mirror to take one last look at the town.
I will speak with you. I will trust that if you write a play to this, that you say it right. You need to do your best to say it correct.
And in the distance, I could see the sparkling lights of
Laramie, Wyoming.